going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. I'm Miko, joined by my guy Morgan Cannon here, and we are back for another episode of Scouting the Opponent. I finally came up with that name like after we did the last episode, and I had to do the title, and I was like, let's just keep it simple. We're scouting the opponent. We're taking a look at either an aspect or a player or players on the opposing team that the Lions really need to have a game plan for, and we're going to kind of just take a look at the opponent, what they do well, and kind of have this conversation back and forth as we break down the film of what is going right for the opponent, and hopefully what the Lions will have to do and what they can do to counter that. So, Morgan, this week the Lions have a really tough opponent, I would say, in terms of offensive scheme in the Arizona Cardinals. Coming off that loss against Tampa Bay, there's definitely going to be that feeling, I'm sure, with Dan Campbell and the players of, again, getting back to their winning ways, which was kind of a theme last year.
Yep. It's kind of almost like a reprieve to get on the road for this game, in my opinion. Get away from Detroit. You've had 2 home games. Get away from the city. Hopefully, go get a win out in the desert. But yeah, it was fun and also not fun to watch Arizona's film because they're doing some good things right now. Offensively, we've seen a pretty good shift under Gannon. So Gannon's a pretty good coach, man. He's got that team playing pretty well, and they don't exactly have all the horses you need on defense, in my opinion, right now. But they're doing cool things offensively. So he got a bad rap. If y'all remember, he was the guy, shots, pew, pew, pew. And it was really goofy, and everyone made fun of him. Rightfully so. That was goofy. But they're taking some shots now out of 12 and 13 personnel. So they're having multiple tight ends out on the field. I really like Trey McBride, their tight end, 85. Younger player, developing, playing pretty well right now. It'll be fun to get into some of what makes them tick. Sitting at 1-1 right now. Both of them and the Lions will be looking to get their second win of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned Trey McBride. There's also Marvin Harrison Jr., the 4th overall pick in this most recent draft, I believe. That the Cardinals made. Yeah, and after having a pretty quiet game in week 1, exploded in week 2, going for over 100 yards. Really glad that I drafted him in my fantasy league.
For sure.
Definitely.
People were jumping to conclusions after week 1, man. They're like, is he fast enough? This and that. I'm like, man, y'all, that's how I know. Go watch his college tape, man. Yes, he's fast enough. Was the consensus best receiver in a loaded receiver class. So, yes, that man is good at football. Certified.
And it's not even just the speed with Marvin Harrison Jr. He's also just really just technical with his route running. He understands just what it takes to get open, and then he has the physical traits as well.
Almost like his daddy's a Hall of Famer or something, like that.
Right. It's almost like he has Hall of Fame genes in there somewhere. But Oregon, that's probably not where we're going to spend a lot of time talking in this video. When it comes down to what the Lions really have to contend with in this matchup against Arizona, it kind of begins and ends, I think, for the most part on the offensive side with Kyler Murray, and not necessarily what he does with his arm, but what he does with his legs and how he can extend plays. And if the Lions aren't careful with their pass rush lanes or even in defending the run, they're going to open themselves to get gashed for a lot of big runs.
Yeah, and you're going to have to rush, D-line coaches and defensive, coaches everywhere are going to be like, you have to rush as a unit, really. And you have to be sound with your rush lanes. You can't jump out of rush lanes because you're going to get gashed, which we'll see, in a couple plays coming up here. But yeah, man, Kyler Murray is a unique Kyler Murray. Shout out Quinn Williams. Remember that clip? But yeah, Kyler Murray is a difficult player to deal with because he's just so fast. He's probably the best athlete on the field at all times. This is why we wanted to talk about a few things here. So QB spying, let's get that out of the, QB spy used to work in video games back in the day, maybe with,
I was going to say, yeah,
semi fast quarterbacks, 20 years ago. They were not meant for Kyler Murray because here's the problem. You don't really have an athlete to spy Kyler Murray. Like there's not, the Lions have a bunch of athletes on their field, on their defense, but not one that can stay in front of this consistently, especially in the open field. And then, a lot of people are like, oh, the Lions have difficulties stopping mobile quarterbacks. Yeah, them and everyone else. Okay. That's why everyone and their mother wants a mobile quarterback, because they add an element to the game that you have to prepare for that's almost impossible to prepare for at times. Yeah. So yeah, I wanted to get that out before we jumped in the film because me and you talked about that today, and I want to be like, hey, It's not just the Lions who have issues with this. Everyone has issues defending mobile quarterbacks.
No, and it's definitely something worth mentioning because you and I were talking about this before we started recording. Kyler Murray is going to get his, right? Like there's going to be a play or two where it looks like the Lions should be able to get him for a sack and he's going to escape the pocket and he's going to pick up somewhere between 9 to 10 yards. And I think it's not that that's okay to happen, Morgan, but like you understand that like, hey, if we can only limit that to happening 2 or 3 times in the game, we're okay. The thing that you want to really keep from happening is some of these bigger runs that he's already had the first couple weeks in the season where he's, scrambling for 20 plus yards and now he's flipping the field on you off of one play.
100% Miko, because he had a 26-yard run against the Rams and then another 29-yard run against the Buffalo Bills in week 1. So he broke runs off in both of those games, and you start to see why if you don't stay sound in your rushing lane. So we'll kind of keep an eye on Kobe Turner here, 91 for the Rams, and watch him as we rip through this, and you'll kind of see what happens.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I feel like this is almost kind of like a worst case scenario here for the Lions, because oftentimes whenever you and I have talked about mobile quarterbacks or even pressuring quarterbacks in the first place, Morgan, we always talk about like, hey, if you can get pressure in their face, like that's the best type of pressure that you can get to a quarterback. And the Rams get that here. Brendan Fisk is able to literally drive the center into Kyler Murray's lap. But Kyler being the athlete that he is, the minute this happens, there's enough space on that other side of the line that Jared Verse is running for, that there's a big enough gap to where all he has to do is step up, hit that second gear, and he's able to take this for a nice 9-yard scramble.
Yep, and sorry about earlier. I brought up Kobe Turner. That's a clip here in a few minutes. But yeah, this is a really good rush by Braden Fisk. This is the rookie from one of the 2 rookies from Florida State, him and Verse. But Verse, gets a little too wide, and all it takes for Kyler Murray to have the green light, like he's going to take off and hit the little Roadrunner beep beep, is a sliver of daylight, and he gets it here, and he's just so fast, man. I remember back in the day, someone like posted a clip. It was like Kyler Murray runs like a little kid that's really fast, like getting away from you. You can't catch him.
Yep.
And that's stuck in my head forever.
Bro, that popped in my head when I was watching this clip, because obviously it's a further like shot, right? It's a sideline shot for the all 22, but he still looks so much smaller than everybody else. And it is that image of like a kid that's just like high on sugar and is just like running away
so
from
fast.
everyone.
Yeah, fastest kid alive. Shout out what is that, super bad. But yeah, you gotta stay disciplined. Excuse me. Like they're gonna hammer it home this week. Terrell Williams, the Lions defensive line coach. I think it's going to be a major point of emphasis. You want to rush Murray and just slowly crunch or collapse, whatever verb you want to use, that pocket. To just try to corral him almost, because you do this, you get a little overzealous and you jump out of a rush lane. This is what's going to happen.
Yeah, and let's get to the next play that you were talking about with Kobe Turner, because I think this is something that happens, again, in another sense where, again, not really holding true to where he should be rushing and instead gets really excited about possibly beating his man and making a play instead of just holding true to whatever his responsibility is.
Yep. If this is 20 other quarterbacks in the league, this might be a sack for young Kobe Turner, who's a really good player, man. But yeah, just gets a little overzealous and tries to loop around after he rips under the guard. And this is not. And also, I wanted to make this point. This is where it's you might put your defense in a bind if you're playing a ton of man coverage against Kyler Murray, because you know it, Miko. You're a DB. Like, there's nothing worse than running with your assignment, and then you turn around and the quarterback's only 10 yards away from you because he's been running for the last couple seconds. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it puts your defense in a bind if you play a lot of man coverage against a quarterback like Murray.
Absolutely. It puts your DBs, literally almost kind of takes them out of the play, because like you said, their focus is on the person that they're covering, especially if you're running deep route concepts. Everyone's trying to make sure that they're not getting beat over the top. So the minute, these little, 5 yards worth of space or 10 yards worth of space open up, an athlete like Kyler Murray is just going to take off and he's going to burn you for it.
He's good at getting north-south too, man. He cuts it up and he's like eating yardage quickly with his little fast self.
Yeah, and the other thing I was going to say too, like it does that for your DBs. It also does it for your linebacker, because like you were saying earlier with like the whole idea of spying the quarterback, 56 doesn't move very much. He has eyes on Kyler Murray during this
Yep.
play as it's developing, but he just doesn't have the athleticism, Morgan, to like
No.
again be able to close that space. So
Yep.
listen, I think Jack Campbell's a great athlete. We'll see if Alex Anzalone plays this week because he's obviously dealing with the concussion, or at least that's what was reported today during the injury report. But the Lions are going to have to like again find other ways of generating pressure and at the same time trying to keep Kyler Murray in the pocket, because that type of run that we just saw right there, right? That's 26 yards. That flips the field. Now you're in the red zone. Now you're with the opportunity to get a touchdown, or at least definitely put up points.
For sure, man. And it's just a cheap, easy way to get 26 yards. Like, you don't scheme it up. Like Ben
Mm-hmm.
Johnson's scheming up most things the Lions get 26 yards for. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Gannon, that play breaks down because there's a pretty good rush from Kobe Turner. And then Kyler Murray is a good enough athlete to turn it into a 26-yard positive. And you're like, if you're Gannon over there, you're like, well, that worked out okay. So
And the thing that
it's
has
just,
me concerned about that, Morgan, is like while it's pressure from a different place, right? Kobe Turner's rushing from the interior, and then obviously Kyler slips out through the back door. But I could see something similar to this happen if Hutch got overexcited, because the way that we've been seeing him beat offensive tackles the last 2 weeks, like it's very, very quick. And if he again isn't cognizant of the fact of like, hey, I need to try and hold contain, or I need to try to force him to step up and not roll out, you open your defense up for these types of plays. Even for a player that's as good as Hutch, as athletic as Hutch is, he could still find himself on the losing end of plays like these.
yeah, you can't get greedy. Even when I was watching the tape, Murray got away from a bunch of sacks. Like the Rams are heating him up pretty well. They jumped out of rushing lanes a good bit, as we have seen a couple times, but they were heating him up, man, and he's just getting away from you. So you have to be sound. You have to break down. You can't over pursue because he's going to erase that angle immediately and make you look dumb. So you got to really be smart. You can't get greedy. That's my biggest thing. I know Hutch is eating, playing
Yeah.
like one of the best edge players in football right now. I want to commend him, taking his game up a couple notches, but you better come with what did Campbell say last year? A controlled fury.
Control. That's a really good word for this week. Is controlled
That's what we
fury.
need. Because if
Yeah.
you go just fury against Kyler Murray, he's gonna be running around and making a bunch of ESPN highlights, and we're gonna be mad about it next week.
Yeah, because the last thing you want, Morgan, in that vein, is for what happened to Brandon Fisk on this play to happen to someone like Aiden Hutchinson or like Aleem McNeil, because this is a prime example of what you're talking about, right? Getting greedy, getting, eyes getting a little too big, and then things just start to fall apart for your entire defense. And let's be clear here, like this isn't just on the defensive line. Brandon Fisk does miss this tackle, but there's some blame on the back end as well.
Yeah, and this is where there's always cohesion, but between synergy, excuse me, between the defensive line and your coverage. But here, Fisk, like you said, they run a little bit of a game. It's like a delayed game, almost like a stunt. So the defensive end at the top there frees this up for Fisk, and Fisk has Murray, nearly dead to rights. But man, Murray just spins out to that back shoulder. Fisk is ending up eating the Arizona grass, and he's a rookie, and he's a dang good athlete, man. You think about Fisk, he was the one that kind of, for a white defensive lineman, he set the combine on fire, right?
Yeah.
And like right here, I can guarantee you that big boy's eyes got about this big
Oh,
because
because
he was.
he's clean, right? There's no one in his way to be like any form of opposition. And you said this earlier with the other play, right? Any other quarterback, this is probably a sack. Like this is, if it's not a sack, it's probably like this is thrown in the dirt, right? But yeah, Kyler's just good enough to where a simple little spin around and then extends this play. And this is where I say like the back end kind of lets the defense down as well, because this is a situation where if you're a safety and you're, again, eyes are on the quarterback at first, you see him start to scramble. This is what most DBs are taught. It's like the minute you see this quarterback scramble, like, hey, find a man, because everyone is basically in jailbreak mode, just trying to get open. Safety kind of lets his eyes stay in the backfield too long, and he's able to find Marvin Harrison Jr. down the sideline for a really good chunk play here.
Yeah, and it looks like the Rams rushed 4. We mentioned the game. That's what freed up Fisk to almost have a free shot at Murray. And it looks like they're in a cover 2 shell.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just a veteran move by Harrison Jr., man. This is being a ball player, because he settles down. He's looking for an empty spot to sit down in that zone. right there. That's probably where he's supposed to sit down, find some green grass and settle down. But he sees Murray running for his life, and once he sees that DB bearing down on him and flying, he just puts that foot in the ground, spins out to his outside shoulder. And if this ball's better, I mean, I'm not discrediting Murray. He's falling out of bounds
I
when
was
he
gonna
let this
say,
thing
like,
go.
it's yeah.
Yeah, if this throw is like out in front of him, though, he probably scores. But he had to wait for a minute because it was, again, Murray. This is why Murray was a first round draft pick in
Yeah.
MLB too, which is good lord. This is why he's that kind of athlete, because of plays like this, man. You gotta be sound. I'm gonna say it the last time. You gotta be sound in your rush lanes. You can't over pursue them. You want to just slowly squeeze it down, cut off those rushing lanes. Don't give them any daylight to squeak through and hurt you, and try to muddy up those throwing lanes, man. Because as great as of an athlete as he is only 5'10". So if you do keep him in that pocket and you start, squeezing things down, and you got 6'6" guys 3 feet in front of him, it becomes tough to throw the football because your field of vision is really impaired, right? Like you can't really see a whole lot if you're that short back there. So and I think that's what they did. Remember that year they came here? When was that? They came here and just the Lions kicked the crap out of them. Was it 2021?
I was gonna say it feels like if there was a stretch where we were playing the Cardinals like every single
Every year.
and I feel like we've just swapped the Cardinals out for the Seattle, and it's just
I know, man. It's annoying. Can you guys leave us alone? But yeah, I think they came here, and that's really what they did. I think that was during Dan Campbell's first year, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that's what I want to see. Squeeze him. Just don't let him out. And because like you said, if he can extend those plays, if he can break the pocket and roll right or left, and then you get into scramble drill, that's where these quarterbacks can really burn you, man. Like it's impressive to watch him operate.
absolutely. And I mean, we talk about this, and so I think a really good thing that we can do, Morgan, for the audience is show them what it should look like, right? What does it look like to rush with control and to just do what you were saying, constricting the pocket? It looks a lot like this, and I think you did a really good job of breaking this play down to me, even before we started recording.
Yeah, and this is when we talk about stunts or games, you'll hear coaches talk about like a TE or an ET stunt. So really break it down as simple as I can for people. The first letter is going to denote the player who's going first in the stunt, so doing the crashing, and then the second letter is going to denote the looper, right? So these are both TE stunts here. So the tackles are going to go out, and then the loopers, it's Byron Young, and I think that's Verse there up at the top, are the ones who are going to loop in. And that's Byron Young, looping in, we'll see it good from the end zone angle here. He's the one who really frees up Kobe Turner to get Murray down onto the ground. And watch here, man, they do a good job. It's like a nice, like even fist. There's no gaps and everything's squeezed down and there's nowhere for Murray to go. So Young loops. He takes the attention of 72. That's Froholt. I think it's either the guard or center. And because of that, Kobe Turner, only has to get by the guard and ends up getting a sack.
Yeah, and so like you said, like this is controlled. This is not giving him anywhere to step up. He can't roll out left or right. And this is a third down play that the Rams really needed at that point in the game. They still obviously kind of ran out of the stadium. But this was the type of play that they needed from their defensive line to honestly keep that game competitive, and it just didn't happen enough. So if the Lions can see this type of thing on tape and see like, okay, like you're saying, hey, they kind of had some issues handling some of these stunts where we're looping defensive ends towards the interior, which is something really good if you want to get Aiden Hutchinson on like an easy mismatch and not just have him working on the outside, get him looping in on the inside, get him against a center or a guard, and use that big frame to kind of block the vision of Kyler Murray. I think if the Lions can incorporate this type of play from their defense into the game plan, like they can find a lot of success here.
Yep, I'm right there with you, man. It was late in 2021, if y'all remember, December 19th when the Cardinals came here. They lost 30-12, so that was like the first Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes year. But that was kind of when it started getting fun late in the season. They were playing some better football around that time. So, but yeah, I completely agree with you. And that was just a great job of rushing as a unit, right? Like,
yeah,
Byron Young helped make that play. It won't go in the stat sheet, but because he looped around and, got downhill with some intensity, it freed up, it got the eyeballs of 72, and then Kobe Turner ends up making the sack. And that's how you gotta contain an athlete like Kyler Murray, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. So normally in these last couple of videos that we've done so far this season, we've only focused on one side of the football or one specific phase of the game. This is the first time we're actually going to talk about an offensive player and a defensive player, and for good reason, right? When you start talking about Arizona's defense, it doesn't have as many names as it used to have maybe in seasons prior, but there is still one name over there that still needs to be accounted for in safety Buda Baker.
Yeah, man, Buda Baker's that dude. Like, really, since he entered the league in 2017 out of UW, he's a Washington Husky in the second round. He's a unique player, man. And when I was watching the Cardinals, obviously you're focusing a lot on the offense here with Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. and et cetera. But Buda Baker stands out. If you turn that tape on, you don't even really have to know what you're watching. He's going to stand out. So just wanted to include a couple clips here. The difficult thing to deal with Baker is, see here, he's way up at the top like of your screen, and then at the very last second he inserts himself into the run fit. And what makes this difficult, Scotty Montgomery, Lions assistant head coach and running backs coach, talked about this during his media availability on Wednesday. And because Buda Baker, I don't know if he brought him up or a reporter did, but yeah, it's difficult because your protection, like your offensive linemen and even your your secondary blockers, like your tight ends, your receivers, like people who are getting to the second level to block defensive backs and linebackers, it's tough to deal with, man, because he's inserting himself into the play so late. So this happens time and time again where he's up, 10, 15 yards away from the line of scrimmage. And by the time the running back's getting the handoff, he's in the backfield and putting a hurt on the ball carrier, man.
Yeah, and this is something that, again, with a Lions team that I don't want to say that they've been struggling in the run game, right? Because the last 2 weeks they've rushed for over 100 yards and it's looked effective at times, but that still is the bread and butter of this team. And so when you're looking at ways of trying to get, your running game going, or you're trying to do certain types of action, your offensive line and your receivers really have to be aware of where this guy is lined up, because just because he's 10, 15 yards deep doesn't mean that he may not come screaming down to blow up your run play.
Yeah, and I'm glad that Scotty Montgomery and the rest of the coaching staff are like talking about this, because this can mess things up, man. This is how look, we've got negative run play, 1 yard run play. This is how you get behind the sticks, like the Lions were against the Buccaneers. Like they ran the ball pretty efficiently, but they had a lot of several negative plays, or plays for no yards or 1 yard. And you don't want that, because then you're a little bit behind the sticks and you got to make up for that. So yeah, Buda Baker's definitely someone to watch. And yeah, their defense is coming along, like you said. It doesn't have the names of years past, but they're going to be a tough team, in my opinion. The NFC West, kind of interesting.
Always a tough division to kind of play through, even when one of the teams is maybe having a down year. But it's going to be really interesting to see these two teams go up against each other. Like I said, it's been a couple years since they've last played. It's kind of exciting to kind of see this. It almost started to feel like a pseudo bit of a rivalry a little bit, but this is a game that I think the Lions get back on track. I think they get back into the win column with this game. Like we said, I do think Kyler's going to get his. I think we'll contain Marvin Harrison Jr. a little bit better. It's going to be really interesting to see that matchup of him and Terrion Arnold and see how much they get to match up against each other. But Morgan, going into this, I feel really good about a 27-20 win for the Lions. I think, like I said, I think they still kind of put up some points. I think the offense is still going to take a little bit of time of getting everything worked out, but I'm hoping and I'm optimistic that it'll look cleaner than it did last week against Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, if the Lions clean up some of their red zone inefficiencies this week, I think this is a win. And this isn't I think the Cardinals are playing really good football. If the Lions lost this game, I wouldn't be super shocked. And it's also, the sky is not going to be falling if they start off the year 1-2. But I do think they're going to win. I think 34-29 is what I'm going to go with. I think they're going to score some points. And I don't know if it's going to be like the Cardinals, getting a couple scores late or what have you. But yeah, I do expect the offense to get back on track. And, you do enough to slow down Murray. You sack him 4, 5, 6 times. I think you can deal with 40 or 50 rushing yards or whatever he ends up with, because someone jumps out of a rushing lane.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing that we didn't get to talk about a ton, but like limiting James Conner is going to be another big aspect of it. So if you're able to do what the Lions have done even the last few weeks and so far in the season of really just shutting down the running game with the running backs, that in itself also is a really good way of limiting what Kyler Murray and Gannon can do with this offense in terms of like maybe limiting the effectiveness of play action and the short screen game and things like that.
Yeah, 100%. Just like any other week, if you make them one dimensional, it always helps. But it certainly helps against a player like Murray because it just, it removes some of the like variability from a down to down basis. You don't have to prepare. You don't have, they can put in another defensive back or a linebacker in lieu of another defensive tackle, someone who can run around and help corral that guy. So,
Absolutely. So that's pretty much our thoughts on the game this week. What we have to say about the Arizona Cardinals, where we think the Lions are going to have the most trouble, and where they need to put a lot of their focus in terms of being able to get a win this week. But let us hear from you guys in the comment section below. What are you most concerned about going into this matchup? Is it a player? Is it a scheme? Is it a combination of the two that you're really concerned about? Let us know in the comments. Also, you can always feel free to throw in your score prediction if you have one of those. Let us know in the comment section below. Maybe we'll shout you out if you're able to get the score correct. But like always, if you're looking for more Detroit Lions content, all you have to do is head over to prideofdetroit.com. There are new articles being uploaded throughout the week. Also, be sure to check out Pride of Detroit Direct if you haven't. There's exclusive content over there. Exclusive video content as well from Jeremy and some of the guys that as they do, him and Eric do, I think, a post-game breakdown that is only available on POD Direct. They also do First Bite has now been moved over to POD Direct. So if you miss First Bite, that's a really good way of checking it out. If you're, really into that content as well. So that's pretty much going to do it for Morgan and myself. We hope you guys enjoyed the content, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.